So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hi, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Pomegranate podcast again. But I'm delighted here to be joined by Nima from the Italian Football Podcast. You guys might remember myself and Nima had a chat the last day when Nicola Zaniolo signed, and we went off on a mad tangent. And I decided I was going to follow Venezia in Serie B, and they got promoted. So I was the good luck charm this season for Venezia.
Yeah, you were. They won the playoffs, didn't they? Beating Cremonese in the final, if I remember correctly. And it is the most stylish football club on earth. I mean, they just are. There's no one else that comes near them. I mean, in terms of their shirts, the way they present themselves, they are the most high fashion, elegant football club in the world. It's just insane, isn't it?
And it's so funny to look at, they're famous obviously when they got promoted the last time. They had a battle out in the sea between two sets of ultras that they have. They're on the actual the seafront in Venice, and the boat parade after they got promoted was absolutely amazing. And I'm lucky to be in Venice before, and I've stood up here on a lovely sunny day. And it's like something I've never seen before, and I probably won't ever see anything like it again until I go back. So that was pretty cool. But we're not here to talk about Valencia, about Venice. We're here to talk about Aston Villa have decided to make another foray. Well, I don't think they've decided. I think their hand has been forced, I suppose, really, to make another foray into the Italian transfer market, with Douglas Luiz looking set now to join Juventus. It's not really common knowledge. It's been alluded to on Twitter. Douglas Luiz has had a new contract on the table for quite a while with Aston Villa now. Doesn't look like he's going to sign it, and I think Villa are looking to cash in, obviously with their PSR issues and so on. But I suppose parking the Douglas Luiz side of things for a moment, it's been rumored that Weston McKennie and Samuel Iling-Junior are on their way with a wad of cash to Aston Villa. And I want to get your views on both of those players, I suppose. Obviously, you being an Italian football aficionado, I'm interested to hear what you think. Look, I'm going to say it. Everyone here in the podcast here is grating their teeth at the thought of Weston McKennie coming to Aston Villa. How am I going to put it? I'm a bit more calm about the whole situation because of the manager that we have, and the fact that he wants him to come in, and the fact that he turned Etienne Capoue into an absolute world beater at Villarreal, and I think that something like that could happen here. But tell us about his time at Juventus, and I suppose how he's seen amongst the league.
Weston McKennie has not had a good time at Juve. Let's be honest. Ever since he's come, I mean, he did come to a Juve that was pretty much in complete chaos from the moment he's come. Managerial changes, board resignations, sporting directors being prosecuted, presidents being prosecuted. I mean, it's just been absolute madness throughout all of that. But after he is a very limited player technically, and when he came to Juve, that was very evident, and that's why they wanted to get rid of him, and they sent him to Leeds, and were hoping that they got promoted to the Premier League, because then they would have bought him and they didn't have to worry about him anymore. Unfortunately, that didn't materialize for Juve, and he came back, and I have to say, this last season, it's been his best season at Juve. So he's been on an upward spiral, if you want that, from that aspect. This has been his best season at Juve, but it's been a difficult season again for Juve. It's been lots of turbulence. Max Allegri, of course, the legendary Juve coach, has been under lots of pressure these last 3 years, and it kind of boiled over after he won the Coppa Italia, and he pretty much told the current directors to go do one and stick things up their bums and whatnot, and got sacked. And so, it's been very turbulent. But it's not been a good period for him. But then again, I think Weston McKennie is one of those players who, if you have a specific system and you have a specific role for him to do, he will do that. without much fuss. He does have an engine on him. He's a very physical player. He's not very technical, but he's a decent passer of the ball. I think the tactical aspect of the Serie A was what he struggled with the most. He's improved, 2-3 years under Allegri. You will improve. So I actually think the intensity and physical aspect of the Premier League actually suits him better than the Serie A, which is a far more technical and tactical league. And at Juve, you can't get away with some of the stuff that, you just have to understand certain things. I mean, Dejan Kulusevski, for example, was an abject failure at Juve because, Allegri and many others, didn't believe that he could read the game properly. Comes to the Premier League, he's done really well for himself. He's done well for himself at the very least. So, because he's also much more of an intensity, pace guy kind of thing. That kind of a player. Dejan is very technical as well, of course, but I think it's just that the football played in the EPL suits McKennie more than what we saw in the Serie A. Even though this last season he was much better.
And that's interesting, to get that rounded view, and obviously, Juve being in turmoil. I think, like, context. I'm going to go to my grave with my final words will be context is king. It really is.
Oh, because, that's you and me both, then, Neil. Because that's exactly it's exhausting when people refuse to contextualize, and I'm kind of exhausted. One of the reasons I think it's so boring with social media and football is how everything is so bipolar and polarized. Everything is either shit or champagne. Sorry for my language. There's no nuance. It's like everyone is either the greatest of all time or they're absolutely useless. And that can't be true. That's just impossible. You know what I mean? And it's quite exhausting. So yes, context is king. Always.
It absolutely and look, I will, and it's interesting that you say that, because I've just done a small piece in a statistical analysis on Samuel Iling-Junior. We'll get on and speak to him in a moment. I'm not really finished on the Weston McKennie part yet, but there's a lot of context with regards to that player also, that would give you, lots of wide-eyed excitement with regards to what he could bring to the team. But he's still an unfinished product. But when you look, I suppose, at the context around Weston McKennie, since he's left Schalke, he's found himself in just like firefighting mode really throughout his career. He comes to Juventus, as you say, wasn't really suited to the league, and managers moving left, right, and centre. Then he goes and plays in the Leeds team, which I will stand and argue with anybody that Jesse Marsch was one of the least adaptable managers I've seen in the Premier League in the last 5 years. Not to say he's a bad manager. I just think he went in there and just was overwhelmed by the situation, He was the man who was following the man after Bielsa, and we've seen that happen so many times. We saw it happen to Unai Emery to a slight degree after Arsene Wenger. We saw David Moyes after Alex Ferguson. And we'll probably see it to the man after when Unai Emery leaves Aston Villa. If he ever does, we'll probably see the next guy come in. Jesse Marsch is the man that followed the man. He couldn't figure out what was happening in midfield because the players were really set up to play that Bielsa situation. And Weston McKennie was essentially just told, go out there and run yourself until you start bleeding from your nose, because that's all I can get you to do in there, because I don't know how to adapt to the pace of the game within there and to how open we are in midfield. And he played 17 games for Leeds, and for me, he did some things well, but the team was just imploding at that period of time, and it wasn't easy for him. And I think a lot of fans view that as his whole package. But you mentioned
that was also. I mean, I'm sorry, I just got to correct myself.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. He was in the Premier League. He was loaned out to avoid relegation, not promotion. I got my facts mixed up there. I remember it, but the issue was also that the problem with Mr. McKennie is that when he's bad, it is awful. It's eye-catchingly awful, and I think that especially was pertinently true in the Premier League for Leeds, because I remember following. I think there was a space on Twitter between some of his friends and Leeds fans, and they were just hammering him. And it was like they literally were like had enough of him, in the sense that how is he? Why can't he do the simple things right? But I think you're absolutely right, Neil. I think your analysis of what happened post Bielsa with Jesse Marsch coming in is spot on. I think that's exactly what happened. I think it was completely imploding, and Jesse Marsch was not the right person to take over. You go from Bielsa, who is a football scholar, to Jesse Marsch. With all due respect, there's a different caliber. It's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? And you put someone in there without really having given him any real directions, other than, like you said, run into your nosebleeds, and the rest of the team was imbalanced. I'm not saying he was set up to fail, but I do think there is an aspect of that. Yes, I think that's true. I think with someone like Emery, who is so tactically drilled, who doesn't leave anything to chance, if he's accepted this, if he's green lighted this, then he has a role, an idea for McKennie. That's something to be happy about.
And that's where my next question comes from, because this year he played pretty well. He was Juventus's assist leader this season.
Yeah, he was good.
With 10 assists in all competitions, which is, Douglas Luiz, I think, is, if I'm not mistaken, it was either 9 or 10 assists he had for Aston Villa this season as well. Now, Weston McKennie was very much told, play on the right-hand side of the field, do not exert energy into the middle of the field. And a lot of his statistics dropped, like a lot of his action statistics, if you want to call it, his hustle and bustle, his statistics kind of dropped, but in a way, some of his progressive and his attacking statistics went up slightly. Why do you think he was asked to go out and play on that right hand side? And is it like, I've watched him, and I'm going to be honest, at times I watched 5 games of his, and at times I struggled to figure out whether he was playing as a wing back or even as a wide right midfielder at times.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what Allegri wanted him to do. He was seen as a wing back because they played a 3-5-2, but he was also seen as a kind of cover because they had Cambiasso who would invert, and then he wanted McKennie to take out, to take width, so to speak. So Allegri used him as a wing back, right midfielder, for most of last season. That's true. And the reason for that is, again, his engine, his stamina. He has a lot of energy. And he does run a lot, and he makes a lot of, like, he's the kind of player that if you tell him what to do and how much to run, he'll do it. But I don't think he's not the player that you want to give too much time to think on the ball.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And you know what? I think in this Aston Villa midfield, I think that's okay. I think that's absolutely okay. Look, I know we play those lovely neat little triangles and stuff like that, but having somebody in there who's able to shield their own ball and move it off quickly without being that person who has to turn, scan the field, and play that lovely ball over the top. Douglas Luiz could do that at times, like that assist against, I'm going to say, was it Sheffield United, that beautiful one off the outside of his foot. You're not going to get that from Weston McKennie. And that's, once again, context is key, Nima. If you know what you're getting, you won't be disappointed when you don't see those. But what you are getting from him is more of, like, there's against Olympiacos in the Europa Conference League semi-final, we needed somebody who had an engine who could run around and hustle and bustle. Because Santiago Hesse did that to us and absolutely blew us out of the park with himself and Apora in there. And we didn't have anyone who could match that energy. So I think there's definitely a role for that within this team, specifically if we are to, it's an open secret that I think that Unai Emery is going to try at times this season to go with 3 at the back and join the fad that's going on there. And we will talk about that in a moment with regards to maybe, as I say, if Weston McKennie is a right wing back in his mind. I don't think so, but maybe that might be the case. And obviously the other lad we're going to talk about in a moment, it has been a left wing back for Juventus this year. But so I definitely think there's a role in the versatility that the Weston McKennie has here. But I think it's very fair to say if you're expecting a like for like replacement with Douglas Luiz, he isn't it. And I don't think that he should be put in the same bracket as that, because there's a long transfer window there. And I think a replacement for Douglas Luiz, either it is a Ross Barkley that's coming through the doors, or maybe Tielemans is getting more time. I don't know what the story is there, but it's not the like for like I think that people are expecting.
Oh no, it's not. I think you just said everything there that I would wanted to say myself. I think you're absolutely right, and I do think that aspect of the back 3-3-5-2 or 3-4-2-1, however he wants to play, the versatility. You need players with engines when you play like that, especially in the wide areas, and especially in midfield. Who covers someone on the right and left side of centre midfield to cover for the 2 wing backs. So I think there's lots. I think your analysis is spot on, Neil.
Let's move on to Samuel Iling-Junior, somebody who obviously, look, I love a player that gambles on himself. I love a player that takes a gamble, especially at a young age. We've been linked with Archie Gray as well, or not Archie Gray, Archie Brown. The other colour, not grey, it was brown. From Ghent. God, geez, if we were linked to Archie Gray, I think everybody here would be jumping up and down. He's a fine Leeds prospect, I think, that everybody would love to have, and that could be the solution to our right back situation we have. But anyway, we've been linked to players, I think, that have been very, like, once again, speaking about Weston McKennie, he's got an intangible that you can't teach, and that's an abundance of stamina and an abundance of work rate, and you can't really teach that. When we move on to Samuel Iling-Junior, I think another aspect that Unai Emery is looking for is somebody again with those intangibles, and we're seeing a big guy. He tugs out bigger than he does. Like he's 6 foot ish, maybe 5'11", 6 foot, but he's got raw power and pace, and he's somebody that backed himself from a young age to move from Chelsea, didn't accept the scholarship deal there, moved to Juventus, didn't know a word of Italian, COVID hits, and then he's stuck indoors, and all he had to do was to learn Italian, but he does, and he makes a pretty rapid progress through the under-23s, the next gen system, and then in towards the Juventus team. Talk to me a small bit about him, and maybe about what the feeling about him was in and around Turin and around the league in general, I suppose.
No, he was one of, Juventus under 23, or the next gen that they've got, has turned out to be really successful. They've produced quite a few good players, and Samuel Iling-Junior is one of those players. Kenan Yildiz is another, Baranache is another, Sule is another. So he's actually been one of those good, and that's why he got a chance for the first team, because he impressed so much with the under 23s. I think the reason why they want to get rid of him is because they're going to change to a back four with Thiago Motta. They're going to play completely different. They're rebalancing and recalibrating the midfield and the wide areas and wingers. They need wingers, and they feel that it's better to cash in on Samuel Iling-Junior now because he doesn't really fit what they want to do moving forward. But he's not been a flop or anything like that. He's actually been a very positive surprise. Again, he is English. He wants to come back to the Premier League. It was always going to happen. For me, it was just a matter of time. And I think Aston Villa is the right place for him. I really do. I think, again, he's a very young, exciting player. And he's showed that he showed tactical intelligence when he was at Juve for his young age. He impressed despite his young age. Of course, when you're, he's not the finished product. He's still, young players still gonna, need time to learn and improve in every aspect. But no, I think he's an exciting player. I think I think I'd be very excited if I was a Villa fan for him to see what you can make out of him, what Emery can make out of him.
I watched a lot of games of his over the last couple of days since we've been linked. My Y-Scout account is nearly tapped out already. We've got so much of the off season left to go. But I watched quite a lot of his games, and what I could see was a player who's extremely adaptable. Obviously, he has never been a wing back, and this is something that I will rave about any player. Is you could be this guy has talent, but he also has the intelligence to know that the old saying that you'll see written on every gym in every country in the whole world that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. He looks like a guy who will work hard in his craft.
He will.
He studied, like, his defensive numbers for last year and the limited amount of time that he played just shy of 1,000 minutes. His defensive numbers are right up there with any wing back, and that's in a league, as you said, that's very technical, that's very tactical. And exactly, and he was able to fit in, amongst players that are, all of them, I'd say, are going to be at the Euros this year in that Juve defense, but also with a mastermind in Massimiliano Allegri, who's not going to be out of a job very, very long. So for me, his adaptability is something that came across on screen, but also, and you might be able to talk a small bit more about this, I had to watch his 25-minute cameo against Benfica in the Champions League, because I'd read about it, I'd not seen it, and people waxed lyrically about how he came on, Juve down 4-1 in that game, drags them back, I think, to 4-3 is what it was, and it was one of those games that if it had been 10 minutes longer, Juve would have won it, because this guy comes on in a left-wing position and plants one on Vlahovic's head almost straight away after coming on. So, he has the ability to go forward and to go backwards as well, but where would you replace him, I suppose. Like he comes to the Premier League, he's probably going to be an attacking player. Do you think, or do you think he's going to suit that wing back role?
I think he's a. I was very impressed. I know that he's not a wing back, but if he's not a wing back, then he certainly plays really well for not being a wing back, because he was outstanding as a wing back. I mean, maybe he doesn't see himself there and he wants to be a wide player, attacking wide player. Fine. But I mean, based on what I've seen him and how I've seen him play as a wing back, I'm very impressed. I absolutely think he can play there. For me, his mental strength is what is the most impressive about him. He really is very mentally strong. He doesn't. It's like pressure doesn't get to him. He's got this kind of attitude where he doesn't allow pressure to get to him. He's focused on the job and just buries his head down and tries to do the most of it. Doesn't matter if it's the Champions League, next gen in Serie C or Serie D or whatever. He just buries his head down and gets on with it. Doesn't over dramatize it in his head, which is a skill. It's a mental skill to do that. So I think him coming to the Premier League with Aston Villa, who, you guys are going to be in the Champions League next year, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's a move I think he's very happy to make. And I think that's a challenge he's relishing, to be honest. And we'll see. Like you said, it's early on in the It's early on in the window. But I think that this is a smart signing, because he's a young English player. He's a player who has the future ahead of him, and he's already done some impressive things. And he's not the finished product yet.
I have to ask you about one other player at Juventus, because he's going to be a free agent and he's a bit of a nut job. But Adrian Rabiot, I have had this kind of feeling in the pit of my stomach, and this is not in the know. There's no basis for this whatsoever. I just think Villa are going to be active in the free agent market. I would absolutely love him at Aston Villa. Am I mad to think that, or is he as bonkers? Has he been as bonkers this season as he has in past seasons? Because he's a fiery character, I think it's fair to say at times.
Well, he is, and he's got that mother agent of his, Veronique, who is just as bonkers and fiery as he is, and doesn't mind arguing and picking fights with people left, right, and center, especially journalists, who I know of at least two friends of mine, colleagues, journalists, who she's had shouting matches with. And I mean that literally. There's no hyperbole here. Shouting matches. So yeah, look, I think I rate Rabiot. As an Interista, as an Inter fan, I would have liked to see him at Inter even, because I think he's an intelligent player. I think he's very underrated. I think people don't see him because of the fact that he's not a sexy kind of player, in the sense that he doesn't, he's not the most, doesn't dribble five players and, shoot it into the top corner. He's a very useful player. He's an intelligent player. He's very useful in a team. And he was useful at PSG. He was very useful. He's been very useful there, and he was useful for Juventus too. I mean, these are two big clubs. He knows how to handle pressure. No, I understand why you would love to see him at Villa, because for on a free transfer with your wage budget, you definitely that would be a smart signing. But I still think that, I mean, the rumors that I'm hearing and reports that I'm hearing is that Villa are interested in Denzel Dumfries of Inter, the right wing back, the Dutch player. I think you might be going towards, given the players that I'm seeing linked to you guys, I think 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1 is something you might be going towards, honestly.
I was the first that said that. I just had an inkling with regards to it, and I've been tepid with regards to it, because Dean Smith went to 3 at the back for Villa for about 3 or 4 games about 4 years ago, and there's still PTSD about those games at that time. But I think the players have moved on. I think from, and not that actually they haven't. There's quite similar players, but I think it does really rely on the fullbacks from that point of view. But hey, we won't get out over our skis with regards to that one, because I know a lot of Interistas would be quite happy to see Denzel Dumfries go, because he just doesn't suit their style of play.
Listen, Denzel Dumfries is not technically a very good player. He's not he's not an intelligent player. But what he will do, and this is the thing, his mental strength is ridiculous. He has his mentality is genuinely his most important trait. He never ever gives up. He dies for the team. He absolutely cannot stand losing. That he does have that kind of a mental strength. But what he will do, he's aerially good. He's a goal threat. He's a points player. If you play him the right way, that Inzaghi doesn't use him in the build-up, but uses him to overflow the flanks, whether or not there's a ball coming from the left and he's the third person running in, or he's the person pushing forward on the right, helping to offer numerical advantages in the final third. He will score points for you. He will score goals, assists. But if you're expecting someone to beat his man, dribble past players, you're going to be very, very, very disappointed. But that's why you don't use him in the build-up phase. That's why Simone Inzaghi doesn't use him in the build-up phase, but instead changes when he's on the pitch, pushing Dumfries up, or using him as that third, fourth man in attack when Di Marco crosses from the left, for example, which, you know, that run from the wing is always very difficult to defend against, wing back to wing back, which Antonio Conte and other, you know, coaches who play a 3-5-2 have mastered. He's useful there, and he won't cost you an arm and a leg either. 25 million euros, something like that. So, and I think he's reached a point after 3 years at Inter where I think he would be happy to leave as well. So I don't think that would be a difficult negotiation. But I mean, given what I'm hearing, it does seem that you guys are going to a 3-4-2 or a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. It does seem like that.
Yeah, I'd be surprised myself, even though I've been beating the drum for it. I'd be surprised, but I think the tactical fluidity and flexibility is something Unai Emery is going to want, because I think in the back of his mind he's going to, like, it will. And all good managers will self-scout at the end of the year and say, was it that we were getting tired at the end of the year, or did we get slightly found out in midfield, or get found out at the back a small bit? So I think that would be in his mind. And I think he's, as you mentioned, the Bielsa is a scholar of the game, so is Unai Emery. And I think he's going to try and create that unknown for next year. And maybe where is that change? This year, we saw from the previous season to this year, he created that what I was calling it, that W attack formation that he would have, whereby players were attacking positions and spaces, as opposed to trying to look for that piece of magic. And at the start of the season, we were just, you know, when we got rolling for that run, we were just blowing teams away, and then teams capped onto it, and then we had to go wide a small bit more, and we couldn't play through the middle as the year went on. And I think that's something that Unai Emery will have spotted maybe around January, February, March. Teams were a bit clued into that. And he's going to want to have some sort of flexibility with the fullbacks to be able to change that up slightly, I think. So interesting times ahead, I think, for sure. Nima, I could talk to you for about 3 hours on Italian football.
You and I could literally sit for 3-4 hours and just talk football, couldn't we? I mean, every time I come on, it's like we can get sidetracked like we did last time. And
and I would love to do tell me all about the Italian football team going into the Euros piece with you. But I know you've been really busy today. You've had some really cool people you've interviewed today. There was, guys, it was name drop after name drop after name drop. No, I mean that in a good way. So, like, if you guys are anyway interested in Italian football, listen to the Italian Football Podcast. You know, it's really interesting. And one of the names for certain you will be interested in that was interviewed today. English player that played in Italy. So I won't give away any more because it's not my news to break.
No, but I can tell you. I did interview Paul Ince ahead of. It's the second time I've interviewed him as a Euro preview. We're pushing that out on Thursday. And then, of course, because I also run Sempre Inter, I also did like a season review interview, long season review, written interview with former Torino and Inter defender Fabio Galante as well. And then tomorrow we're pushing out, because every summer what we do is, even when, you know, now this summer is extra busy because there's the Euros going on. But normally when it's the summer break, we do like these club-specific transfer deep dives. With Italian journalists and experts, and I did one for an hour today as well with about Napoli, because of course Antonio Conte's gone there, which is popcorn interesting in and of itself with Aurelio De Laurentiis, if you know anything about the owner there, and Antonio Conte's
fireworks
character.
there.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is match meet petrol. How's this going to work out? So we did that. So yeah, we got lots of stuff coming out. We had Stuart Pearce a week ago on the pod previewing the Euros as well, where we got some really cool stuff coming up. So yeah, thank you, Neil, for your support.
No, as always, I love watching football and listening to podcasts for other leagues as well, because there's only so much football, I suppose. Like I hate to get pigeonholed into my own thoughts, because that's one sure way to become arrogant, cocky, and everything else. And
100%.
I'm terrified of becoming arrogant and cocky. And that's why whenever I do any of my scouting series and stuff like that, I always contextualize it with, this is my view on it, and I'm not trying to convince anybody that this is any different. You guys can have a different view, but I urge everybody to be an amateur scout as well, because I think that's where the fun comes in. So listening to all the other podcasts,
100%.
For people who watch and immerse themselves in other leagues, gives you that, it knocks off that conscious bias, or that unconscious bias that you might have about a player or a team or something like that as well. So
I agree 100% with every word you just said.
Yeah, excellent. But that's brilliant. And as I say, Nima, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to let you go back, because you've got a field of editing to do tonight. Of editing to do. So
yes, 3-4 hours at least.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to let you go back to that. I really appreciate your time. You are my go-to person with regards to Italian football. So thank you so much. Everybody go follow Nima, and go follow the Italian Football Podcast as well on Twitter and on Spotify. And for everybody else here, I'm seeing people talking about Duran news there in the chat. I'm not even going to get into that. There's probably a whole hour's podcast on that one if those figures are true. But we might even come back again later on tonight if it's confirmed. So we might see you again later on. But thanks so much, everybody, for your time. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody. And all that's left to say is up the Villa. I can never end the stream.